Chainsaw Man is a manga that breaks people, and sometimes it feels like the sole intent of the manga itself is to torture the main character. But I have been away from Chainsaw Man for a while just because I was letting it build up chapters, that way I can run through it, because this is a series made for binging if you ask me. It's a very hard series to keep up week to week just because it's so easy to blow through chapters. And I did kind of stop in a bad spot. It was at the end of an arc rather than at the beginning, so that was definitely a mistake on my part, but I guess it was a good refresher before starting this new arc. So you can expect me talking about all the huge events that happened chapters 71 through 83. So if you haven't read that far, this is your spoiler warning. 3, 2, 1. Now the first thing to talk about is definitely Power's PTSD. At the beginning of this new arc, she's practically attached to Dingy's hip. She's having nightmares, and Dingy and Aki both are pretty much having to take turns taking care of her. Dingy, however, does end up doing most of the work, so the relationship between him and Power becomes that much tighter. So this one aspect of the story not only developed Power as a character, but also Dingy and a little bit of Aki, but it mostly strengthened the relationship between Dingy and Power a lot. And this does lead me into talking about how Aki got cold feet. But basically all that means is that he started really caring for Dingy and Power both. He didn't want to see either of them die, so he decided to completely pull out of the operation, himself included. But given how this story is told and how much suffering is involved, we knew that that wasn't going to happen. Makima specifically was not going to let that happen. And it is pretty easy to see how his plan would get foiled by pretty much a mile away. The only reason they live at all is to hunt devils. So even if Makima wasn't a psychotic manipulator, I still don't see a way how Dingy or Power could have gotten left out of this operation. But of course, after finding out Dingy and Power couldn't back out, he immediately joined back. And this is of course exactly what Makima wanted. And all of this was leading up to Aki's death, which I'm still pretty confused about, especially while the fight between Dingy and Aki was happening. I had absolutely no fucking idea what was going on. So that really affected my emotional investment within this fight, and of course how the fight affected me afterwards. I'll definitely understand it a lot better on my rereads, but my first read through I had absolutely no idea what was going on. But that does lead me to talking about something that absolutely ruined my day. I was at work on my break whenever I was reading this, and whenever I saw Power's death, it just made me want to turn off my phone, go home, and go to sleep. Her death made me feel like absolute shit. So I guess even of course though I hate it, I have to give props to the author. The build up towards her death, the actual death itself, and the after effect, all of it was executed phenomenally, and it felt like a true gut punch. And I feel like I need to name specific aspects, because if I don't, I think it comes off as kind of arbitrary praise, if that makes any sense at all. Now of course you have Makima stating exactly what she was about to do, and not only that, but you have the door. And I really like the idea of the door. Some things you just really don't want to know, but Dingy was faced with situations where he pretty much had to open that door. And then there's the fact that Power brought a birthday cake, just adding to that gut punch even more. But definitely the most significant aspect to Power's death is Dingy's reaction to it. Now the last thing in entertainment to really hit me this hard was in manga itself, and it was in Berserk, and that's of course the eclipse. Now these events that are happening right now in Chainsaw Man do hit a little bit harder for me specifically because I didn't know they were coming, and when I was watching Berserk I knew that they were coming, so obviously it didn't hit that hard. But that's kind of besides the point. Basically in the eclipse, Guts' reaction to everything going on was expected. That's how you expect a character like Guts to react. But with Dingy, he's a completely unpredictable character. When Makima did what she did to Power, the predictable action for Dingy to take would be to go berserk. But that's not at all what happened. He's completely broken. He doesn't know anything to do. And strangely enough, he's relying completely on Makima to tell him what to do. And while this might be somewhat frustrating as a reader, because it's not at all satisfying, we want to see Dingy take on Makima, completely slaughtering her for what she did to Power. But given the philosophy that Dingy has, and it was explained to us what his philosophy was, the decision that he made makes sense. And of course by the end of the story he will start going at Makima as the final antagonist, or at least I think she'll be the final antagonist. But that immediate reaction that Dingy had was actually kind of genius if you ask me. It just really shows how well this writer knows his characters. Now on to my predictions and my hopes, because some of these things, even though I want them to happen, I really don't think they will. will. Now first up we have Dingy versus Makima. I talked about this a little bit, but pretty much I think that she's going to be the final antagonist. I think it's all leading up to her, and of course this is ending one of two ways. Either Dingy's dying or Makima's dying. Or of course there's also the third way, they both end up dying, they end up trading blows and then they both die. But of course if I want to be optimistic, just hopefully it's just Makima's dead, that's it. And let's say Dingy is still alive after his final fight with Makima. Obviously he'll just be dealing with the death of his friends, true depression and stuff like that. I think that if he survives, we really do need to see him deal with that stuff. And for my last hope, of course I want Power back. It might cheapen her death obviously, but I just want her back. She got #1 on the popularity poll for a reason. She is the fan favorite character. Or maybe her, Dingy, and Aki all meet in the afterlife. It's some bittersweet type ending. I just don't want that death to be the last thing we see of Power. Now finishing things off with a little bit of praise, the art in this manga is phenomenal. It's so simple but so amazing. The facial expressions have to be my favorite aspect of this manga. It tells so much, and this is a story mostly told through art. There's not that much dialogue. That's why you can run through the chapters so fast, and that's something I really appreciate about this manga. It doesn't waste your time at all. The character designs are all pretty great, and the 2-page spreads are actually incredible. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for me. Tell me what you guys thought in the comments below, and this is Rummy signing out.